I'm just getting a
I'm done. I just haven't done the work side. I don't know how to do that in like 4 minutes. Mike. 10 of my slides are about quotes, and the other 2 are from like modern day. The English project yeah. And then when we do meet in groups, just like I feel like we need a bigger slide. They're not going to follow us. Dude, what are the rules for going to do you have to get to the
Oh, no, I'm just... All right, thanks.
Yeah, all good.
Town council
Greg, did your mom give something to you for me?
Yes, I have half of it.
Okay, because she called me yesterday and I said, I'm going to see your son tomorrow night. And she says, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yep, I need to get an invoice. I told the contractor I have to have an invoice from him so we can pay it. So he's going to have one for us tomorrow.
Okay, that's good, because I just said she was going to try to pick up with me and I said, see your son. She says it looks good. I haven't been over there
Yeah,
like
it does. It's a big improvement.
Is it the end of this?
We did that whip that she did the painting. Drove over that sidewalk. What wasn't trash?
Yeah, those lips are incredibly heavy.
Have you seen it build the sidewalk?
Yeah.
She says it looks phenomenal.
Should be easy. Yeah, it should be easy to tell.
He's getting it.
I'm hearing it.
I'm not going to do that for 2 minutes.
Okay. Doing a drum roll, please.
Yeah.
We're already on tape, so that's really annoying.
yeah, people home.
They're just computer.
That's right. Oh, give me that. I can make you. Oh, yeah. She'll give it to me so I can bomb you on that.
With sugar, Steve.
All right, I'll
That's, yeah, that was my afternoon getting my hair from her. I hate it when it's this curly, though. Tom loves it. I hate it. I wait till it comes around. Oh, does that make noise? Does that lemonade?
Yeah, that's why it picks up like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not all about you. I thought that Mike got made sure I had it. See, you just blew it all on the board. You're right, buddy, is the Annex.
She's got one.
I finished it right before I came here.
There's chairs.
Ready? I'd like to call this meeting of the Ledyard Town Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Yes.
Yes, here.
Well, welcome. We have a full house tonight. There will be a quiz at the end.
Do we have to get it right?
It's the end of the semester, right?
That was the easy part of it.
Are there any residents and property owners that would wish to address the council at this time? Mr. Burns.
Good evening, council members. I'm Robert Burns, Ike Farms, 769 Shoeville Road in Ledyard, Connecticut. And I'm here tonight to share just a couple of brief things with the council members. The first is Ledyard's going to give a presentation later on, but I wanted to say that the agricultural grant that we were able to get was really helped, by Ledyard working with a former town planner. And without it, we probably wouldn't have a farmer's market. And then the other thing I'd like to say is like a quick kind of humorous story. I'm still a skeptic. I mean, I'm on the board of directors of the Ledyard, but I'm still skeptical of regulators generally. However, I was kind of shocked this summer at the farmer's market when right in front of my booth, the lady from Meadowbrook Farms that was selling the cheese talked to the health inspector, and she said to him, she stood there, she says, she says, I'm a grandmother. And she says, I've been in a lot of farmers markets, and I've seen a lot of health inspectors, but she says, you are the finest health inspector I ever saw in my life. And I want to congratulate you for all the help that you've given us with our cheese. So I just want to share that with you. Thank you.
Committee, commission, and board reports. At this time, I invite Director Salisbury to come up and make a presentation from Ledyard.
Thank you very much. Had I known Bob was going to say that, I would have worn a different tie. Thank you, Robert. I was going to speak with you last month when Carenza came and talked about Ledyard Safe Teens, but I was delayed getting here, so I'm grateful that you found time for me this evening. It's my desire to come and speak with you at least twice a year to bring you up to date with certain health department programs and activities, and also take questions from you on any subject that you like. I have prepared a brief presentation that you should find in front of you to illustrate, in this particular visit, I want to illustrate the subject of epidemiology and GIS, Graphic Information System, GIS mapping, as health department tools. This will be a quick run-through. Should you wish to get into greater detail on either of these three subjects, please contact me. I will come visit with you and do the reports in great depth. The first one you have on top refers to a bacterial or E. coli contamination of a food service establishment that took place in, yes, Ledyard, of all places, in 2012. Now, 99.9% of the time, such an outbreak is not publicized. These are confidential. In this particular instance, one of the tenants spoke to the press, and in fact, this outbreak was identified in the newspapers, so I feel free to talk with you about it. The sheet that you have before you is an example of a combination of an after-action report and a QI instrument. That's a quality improvement instrument. We don't do this lightly. This takes some work to prepare these materials, but they're very important. What you see is a pictorial graphic beginning on September 21st and ending on October 9. This is the progress of this particular disease outbreak, this foodborne outbreak. We prepare this for three reasons. First, I need to know how well our staff performed and how to improve it. Second, we need to know how we interacted with the multiple individuals and agencies with whom we deal on an outbreak. It's very subtle, it's very complicated, but the owners, the tenants, municipal officials, the media, the private well testing, the state health department, the state lab, all of these are players in a disease outbreak investigation with myself as the director of health at the center of that particular set of activities. The third thing that we look to, that we use this instrument for, is a little more subtle, and it is simply to shrink the distance between the 2 points on this graph. As you may be aware, a foodborne disease outbreak in a restaurant or catering firm is a very important and, in some cases, tragic event. And the longer an establishment remains closed, the greater the chances it will not open again, or it will open at a great disadvantage. Every day that it is closed dramatically increases the likelihood that that establishment will not regain its customers. So we take it very, very seriously to try and get this done in as short as time as possible. So one of the reasons for this particular graphic is for us to examine the activities hour by hour, day by day, to see if we could take a day off this or 2 days off this. We have to work on approximately a dozen of these a year in the health district as a whole. And you get pretty good at it, but everyone has a unique set of circumstances. So that's the purpose of this first one. It is a QI exercise for the department's environmental and epidemiological staff. The second graph is titled Tick-Borne Disease. And this is an initiative that we have begun last year as a 5-year initiative as we seek to get a handle on, in particular, Lyme disease and ehrlichiosis in the 6 municipalities of the district. Because as health director, I get copies of the lab reports of such diseases, we are able to map them. And as you can see from this map, this allows us to interact with our municipalities, in this case in particular, East Lyme and Waterford, in order to mount the kind of prevention programs, health outreach, health promotion programs, health education programs in schools, community centers, senior centers, parks and recreation, municipalities, in order to eventually bring these rates down in these sensitive hot spots. This is an example of GIS mapping to help healthcare and public health workers find out where the problems are and adjust our interventions and our resources to bring those statistics down in line. The third map, again, I'm illustrating GIS work in public health for you. The third map is something quite new. This is a new collaboration with the health department and Lawrence and Memorial Hospital. Hospitals like L&M, to attain their and retain their nonprofit status with the IRS, are now required to conduct community health assessments for a variety of chronic diseases, accidents, injuries, etc., and then to work in conjunction with the local health department to mount interventions to meet those problems where they exist. Here, you are seeing a GIS interpretation of emergency room visits for asthma for 1 year. and the rates thereof. The map is actually more illustrative when it's blown up, but you can get an idea from this shortened version. Here, again, in this case, it enables the hospital personnel in conjunction with local health to plan interventions in specific neighborhoods, specific housing projects, specific blocks of rental housing, in conjunction with our municipal partners to bring these rates down. I would remind you, and I'm sure you all know this, a case of asthma, a 9-year-old entering the emergency room at 1 o'clock in the morning, is preventable. Virtually all cases of asthma entering the emergency room represent a failure of clinical and community preventive health services. They don't have to be there. Asthma attacks are preventable by medication, asthma management, the elimination of environmental triggers in the home. These are preventable, and they're very costly. So this is one of the reasons why L&M and the Health District are focusing on asthma to begin our collaboration in mapping. I've also got 2 other little items for you I'm very happy with. You will see in this particular rendering, for the last year and a half, the district staff have been working quietly behind the scenes to change and update our public image, our website, our interactive website, our ability to answer and deal effectively and quickly with inquiries coming over the website, and a new logo, which you see changes from the old lighthouse. It was getting difficult having all those inquiries about the credit union at our number. So this is, after 15 years, a new start for Ledgelight with a bold and dynamic logo. And finally, just off the press today, is the quarterly newsletter. I bring it in particular to point out on the back, on the page 4 on the rear, there is an article about the Great American Smokeout, and a notice that our smoking cessation work in Gales Ferry begins January 10 for Ledyard residents. I'm pleased to answer any questions on any subject.
Do any councilors have questions for Director Salisbury?
I know last year there were several towns trying to form an alternative health district. What has Ledgelight done to try to entice those towns to join Ledgelight?
The only specific thing that we've done is meet with 3 times with the officials from Stonington, who encouraged us and then came to a public meeting and changed their mind. We have also been contacted by 2 other towns confidentially to talk behind the scenes about the prospect of joining the district. One of those discussions is ongoing now, but there is no particular movement on the part of any of those towns to form a new district.
Do you have any idea why they're not interested in joining Ledgelight?
Oh, I think there are dozens of reasons: historical, geographic, financial. For many towns, you can pluck them out of a hat. For towns that spend $15,000 on public health, with a part-time sanitarian and a part-time director of health who gets $2,500 a year to sign the occasional order, to join the district means that they would get the services of 24 professionals, but they'd also be paying 3 times as much. It would be $15,000, it would be $45,000 or $35,000. And as one first selectman said to me privately, not in confidence, but privately, said, to do this, he says, of course I should be in the district. It makes no sense for us not to be in the district. But it would mean that one single line in my budget would go up by 300%. Even though it would be a small amount, it would go up by 300%, and I don't want to get hung out to dry.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for coming this evening, and
My pleasure.
we will hope to see you next quarter.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other committee, commission, or board reports at this time? Seeing none, are there comments of town councilors? I'll start on my left. Councilor McGrattan.
Okay, we finished the Know Your Town program. We had 7 sessions. 17 people came to at least one. 11 attended at least 3. And we got 9 returns when we sent out a questionnaire. And the people who responded lived in town anywhere from 6 months to 50 years. Most of the people lived on the high end. And then, how did you find out about this? Most of the people found out through the Ledyard newsletter. So we got very good marks. Everybody felt it was very worthwhile. We got 1 or 2 possibly, thinking about maybe volunteering for something. But like I said, it was a good program. No bad marks. So I think we'll do it again next year.
Anyone on my left? Anyone? Yes.
I'd just like to thank in advance the people that have volunteered to fill the numerous vacancies that we have on boards and commissions, and ask for more to step forward. It's a tough thing to do. It requires time, and it's an invaluable thing to do. So I think you owe it to your town, and I'm happy to see as many people have stepped forward as they have so far.
I wanted to thank the volunteer fire departments in Ledyard and Gales Ferry. Because of Facebook and all the activity and the posting by the fire departments on Facebook, one gets a really great sense of how fun the Santa Run is. But it's a really wonderful thing that they do for the town and for the residents, and I just really enjoy reading about it on Facebook. Second thing I want to do is compliment the United Methodist Church on their fantastic performance on Sunday night. We went, it was a packed house, and it was absolutely great. Thank you.
Anyone else? I just wanted to mention, I actually had spoken to the mayor about this a little while ago, and last couple of weeks brought it back to mind. I've gotten in the mail a Ledyard Parks and Recs flyer, a Ledyard Historical Society newsletter, a library newsletter, information from the Gales Ferry Fire District, and then the Senior Center newsletter was in the mayor's office. And I just wonder if there wouldn't be a way we could just combine all this into one great newsletter. It just seems like it would be maybe it's not even more cost effective, but I think it would be really nice for the citizens to get all their news in one place. So I would like to refer this to this little project to community services, if I may.
Speaking of that newsletter, I noticed we don't have anything in it.
I didn't put anything in it this time.
Oh, okay. Usually we have something in there.
Oh, we?
We.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you meant me personally.
No. You usually personally do as well. I did not notice that. But I did notice that there was nothing in there from the council. And I so look forward to reading what we've been doing.
I guess, I think we didn't pay our share, is what it was.
Well, we weren't aware there was a share.
Well, there was a little bit of controversy over it, so, which brings it all, again, to this whole point of
Sending it to community service.
it should be a town-wide newsletter, not a Parks and Recreation newsletter, and I just think we need to relook at it in terms of what would be best for the citizens. And I would love to see it all in one place. And I know there are big issues about it in terms of, I think the senior citizens letter doesn't really cost them anything because they get advertisers. But anyway, just a thought. And I'm going to pass these down to join. And also, I have some newsletters. I will give you a sample from the town of East Lyme that Roxanne was able to get for me from her town.
Very good.
Moving on, approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of November 4th, 2012.
14 second.
Motion-
Oh, yeah.
Motion,
Those two.
Thank you.
motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. You have copies of communications and referrals. We will move on to the council subcommittee liaison reports. Admin?
The administration committee met earlier this evening. We made several committee, commission, and board appointments. I will echo Mr. Fred Allen's comments that it's been nice to see so many people stepping forward. It seems that the Ledyard Forum has had some part in that, and that's been very helpful. We also set a hearing date for the revised Ledyard blight ordinance. We'll be looking at that a little later in our agenda. And we also made a very small revision to the Ledyard Town Center Committee. And that was pretty much it.
Any questions for admin? Community services?
We met earlier this evening, and we'll talk about that later on in the agenda.
Finance?
In addition to the agenda items, Finance Committee met last week. In addition to that, I met last night with the Board of Ed Finance Committee, their initial look at the upcoming budget. We will have our joint meeting between the Town Council and Board of Ed Finance Committee meeting January 11th. It'll be the first time we get together to look at the budget after the Board of Ed Finance Committee has a chance to review it.
Any questions for finance?
Well,
Yes.
Mike, what time and place is that meeting at?
For
The joint Board of Ed.
joint Board of Ed meeting will be in the Board of Ed office building at 7 o'clock Tuesday.
Information technology, Counselor Sons.
Information Technology Committee has not met since the last council.
Land use planning,
Land use has also not met since our last meeting.
Board of Education liaison, Counselor Allen.
Since several haven't met, I'm going to pick up the slack because I had 2 meetings in the meantime. No problem. I'll keep it moving along. The Ledyard High School girls volleyball team was recognized for the ECC and the Class M state championship. Senior swimmer Jessica Hespler was recognized as an All-American swimmer for Ledyard, and she will be swimming for Virginia Tech this fall. The ad hoc committee for the all-day K has been working hard, and they have come to a conclusion that they would recommend approval to move to all-day K in the town of Ledyard. They're still working on the 6th grade relocation, and there's going to be a presentation on January 2nd for that with an expected vote on January 16th. Let me scan down to the more important stuff. They're still trying to make up a few school days from the hurricane. They're getting there. They're coming up with some alternatives. Then we get back down to the December 5th meeting, and more residents spoke in favor of all-day K. Nobody spoke against it. And after a little bit of discussion, the Board of Ed has elected to move ahead with all-day K. So this coming fall will be the first year of all-day kindergarten. Seems like Dr. Grenier has a pretty good handle on the finances of it, and the first year they're looking at about a $73,000 increase to go to all-day K. Quick note, LHS choral concert, they are December 14th and 15th. They are always very, very well attended, and for those that want to go, I'd recommend getting there early. And they're still working on the Common Core state standards. They're working on the middle school stuff right now, and they're moving along. Dr. Keith had a presentation on that. Technologically, all the schools are advancing very well. They've done a good job of reducing too much redundancy in the schools, so they've whittled it down to single servers in a lot of cases, and which is reducing maintenance. They're buying off-lease computers and Pfizer donations and things like that. They've basically got all the whiteboards in most of the classrooms. The high school has the fewest with 36 out of the 51 classrooms. The rest of the schools pretty much have them all. And the final item is that they've approved the 2013 final phase of the asbestos abatement at the high school. That is it.
Any questions? No questions? Moving on to WPCA liaison report.
WPCA did meet on Tuesday, November 27th, and I filed a report online, so I'll just hit the highlights. The WPCA received a report from Groton Utilities regarding the status of Elgin Heights, and there is another delay in the pump station. I haven't got the latest update on it, but as of that time, the pump station design was supposed to be submitted. The redesign was supposed to be submitted yet again. The members of the WPCA expressed their frustration with the continued delays, and they have invited the engineer, and he's agreed to attend a special meeting next Tuesday. And Groton Utilities will also be present. The idea is that we get everything out on the table and understand the reasons for the continued delays. Also, a number of Clow hydrants. Clow is a manufacturer of hydrants and failed due to lack of maintenance in the past, and WPCA had to spend water to replace parts, put parts in inventory, and also replace some of the hydrants. The old Highlands well station was vandalized again by fire, and the WPCA is going to be running to the town asking for assistance in getting bids from the scrapper to remove the building, hopefully at no charge. The treatment plant provided a report indicating that they do have a DPH requirement. They rehire or replace the plant operator who is retiring. There was a problem with the CUSI, that's the information billing system server, which resulted in the office staff having to re-enter data for 3 days of receipts. We were taken manually. And I think the best news and the biggest news is that the WPCA received the first financial reports from the town's new Munis system, and they look pretty good.
They look good as in a profit, or they just look good as they can read them?
They look good. And they actually, I'm being careful when I say this because we're still validating the data. They actually look like WPCA may not be losing money. And I'm saying that with lots of caveats.
Okay, but they, I
mean,
wonder
they really do
they look good. That could mean a lot of look goods, yeah.
You're not able to read them.
Yeah, that in itself takes some
But this is a huge step forward because we finally have some information about expenses, not just revenue, but actually we have both revenue and expenses. So really good news, and many thanks to the finance department of WPCA office staff. And finally, they discussed and approved an authorization for the chair of the WPCA to sign the interregional emergency plan on behalf of Ledyard's water system. That's a new plan where we'll be sharing water between towns without having to go to the DPH and get authorization in advance. The problem with that is if there's an emergency, you don't have time to contact DPH. So the towns will be sharing water. It's a good step forward. That's my report. Thank you.
Any questions of Councilor Psalms? No? Any other liaison reports? Yes, Councilor Flynn.
First, I'd like to correct for the joint meeting is actually January 8th, Tuesday, January 2nd, Tuesday at 7 o'clock for the two finance committees. The Conservation Commission met Tuesday before the Finance Committee meeting. I was there for about 20 minutes. They are, last year they received a grant, the Rivers Alliance grant, to clean up boat landing, Pocatonic Cove, a small boat launch. They're progressing with that. That'll continue through December of next year. They're submitting quarterly reports on that as the grant is being used. They've subdivided that area up into 4 areas, looking for native plants, and have identified a series of native plants for each one of the areas, and are targeting the spring to actually start the planting of those. They're looking for input from experts in the area on which native plants would do best in each area, as opposed to just randomly picking the native plants. They're going to try and find the ones that would do each area very well.
Very good. Any other liaison reports? Report of the mayor.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Davis. I was at the subbase on November 30th, and I co-signed the letter which has been signed by the governor and Groton Mayor Summers in regards to the purchase of the Volpe property. We are right now just waiting. All the documents are in order, and the contracts have been signed. I'm just waiting for the funding because it is state, and then we will close on the property. We're hoping that that will be this month. Chairman Davis and I met with Representative-elect Tim Bowles, Senator-elect Kathy Ostin, and Representative Ted McAllister in 3 separate meetings. It was a good discussion. We did bring them up to speed on some of the issues that were unique to Ledyard. We had some general discussions about the state in general, but again, giving them some of the unique issues that face us. It was a very frank discussion, and I think there was a very realistic output on their part. And there was, I also attended a legislative panel at the sub-base with many other area elected officials, and there was general agreement that the state, by municipalities, that the state needs to address impacts to the municipalities, both in terms of aid and in terms of mandates. There's a lot of concern about some delays that come about just in terms of getting things through the state and the state approval process. Just to add, every day seems to bring new headlines concerning the state of the state, and I would just, as we go forward, I would just, caution us that we need to be very, very careful. It's not a situation where we're looking at next year's budget and saying, well, I wonder if the state's going to be able to give us the same amount of funding. It's a matter of, will we get the funding that we've been promised for this year? And, just step back and think, if we were to lose tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, and that may be a bit extreme, of dollars, what would we do as a municipality for this year and then going into next year? So I think it's a very sober discussion that we had. I've spoken with them several times since, our representatives, and they're up there now going through the governor's plan. The issue seems to be, when you speak with them, that all of these discussions are going on in private, and it's basically a situation where they then bring the package out, and here it is. And of course, the newly elected representatives do not have not taken office yet. You may have seen in one case several weeks ago where, again, our police were dispatched out of town. It's an ongoing process. I've had discussions with Sergeant Gilman and Lieutenant Finkelstein on the policy. I am concerned about it, and I'm concerned about it because it directly affects the safety and response time to our citizens. And there is no doubt in anyone's mind that when our police are dispatched out of this town, and in some cases our entire force of officers is dispatched out of our town, that is a direct impact on safety. And I know that I am limited in what I can do, but I am having discussions about that, and I will keep the council informed on where we are going with that. If you haven't heard along that line, Sergeant Gilman has been promoted, and he will be leaving us probably within the week. I have written a letter that you've seen requesting to the state that we have some type of a say, or at least a familiarity with who it is that replaces him. That's been an issue that I've dealt with before, and I'm concerned because we have had some excellent officers over the years, and I'd like to see that maintained as long as we have a resident trooper. Sergeant Gilman has been an excellent officer, and he has managed us well. We are very much hoping that in his new assignment, he's assigned to Troop B. That would be fantastic to have him over there. And the police force, in the interim, they will rise to the occasion. We have excellent officers, Lieutenant Finkelstein and his sergeants, who I'm sure will carry on that excellence. Dispatch RFQ process. The Public Safety Subcommittee has met with those organizations that we are considering that we consider have met the qualifications, and that is the town of Groton, the town of Montville, and our own Emergency Communications Center. Actually, we'll be meeting with them on Friday, and we're just going through what they have submitted to us in terms of their qualifications and any questions we have. Every one of these 3 organizations we feel are qualified to dispatch. However, each one is unique, and each one has unique characteristics, advantages and disadvantages, but we are pursuing that aggressively. We're also pursuing this because we anticipate, may not be in the immediate future, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, with what's going on in the state. In the state of Connecticut, there are now 106 dispatch centers. Wow, so what? There are 169 towns, that makes sense. There are a couple of problems with that. First of all, the state pays for the 911 service at each of those 106 locations. That costs money. And that's why the state right now uses monetary incentives to get towns to regionalize dispatch. But also, to put it in perspective, the state of Rhode Island has 3 centers. There are 69 centers in Pennsylvania, and there are 24 centers in Maryland. And then the anecdotal one they always talk about is that the state of California has 3. So, we certainly know it is physically possible to dispatch from anywhere. And certainly we're not talking about something that extreme. But it's something we need to keep in mind because we're about to potentially go to the voters with a new police building which will contain a dispatch center. And we are a semi or quasi-regional area because we dispatch the town of Preston. But, what happens if a few years down the line the state comes along, withdraws our assistance, or directs us that we need to join another center? We need to be ahead of the curve on this, and I think the Safety Board is doing that, Public Safety Commission. Speaking of the police facility, the building committee did vote to designate the town hall site, this site, as the primary site for the new police facility. There are advantages to this site. We also feel that if we did put the building at this site, there are other possibilities of things we could do with this campus that we would not normally do or would not be able to do. We are asking the architect to give us an optional plan for Al Clark Drive, just for comparative purposes, so we know, what is the premium we pay at this site versus that site. Mary Ann Chinati, you may remember, she filled in for us as wetlands officer this past year. She has come back. We brought her back and rehired her part-time to support the Wetlands Commission, and we are actively looking at options for filling the zoning official position. I'll keep you informed on that. The Alton Heights project, just to supplement somewhat what Councilor Sounds said, Phase 1 is complete and tested. That means the water up Avery Hill Road to the tank has all been installed, it's been pressure tested, and that's done. That's all the way up to the Preston border. Phase 2 in the neighborhoods will be 50% complete by December 21st, and that's when they're going to shut down the project for the winter. Phase 3, Marlene Drive, I just have here TBD. Yeah. Well, we're working on it. And you gave me TBD. Okay. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Rodriguez?
The Conservation Commission, the Park Code Conservation Action Plan group had requested some changes to our plan for conservation development. And while they were bringing that up, I know that the 10-year date is due next year for update to that. Asking what the plan was for that process to update the plan for conservation development.
I would have to look into that.
I can answer a little bit of that.
Okay.
Right.
Right. So 2003 was the last time that the plan was in its entirety revised, but since the Planning Commission had been updating the plan incrementally over the last 10 years, they do not have to resubmit an entirely new plan in 2013.
They're actually reviewing it again. There's some more incremental changes.
Correct.
I think that's how we change.
Correct.
Councilor Rebecca.
The police station on the campus here, are we talking about where the old firehouse is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're looking at that. The issue with this site is the old fire station site is 1.03 acres. So if you look at that as potentially a commercial site, by the time you get through zoning setbacks and everything like that, all you can basically put on that is something that's probably not even as big as the fire station. Holdridge has a 24-foot easement that runs on that side of it. So by making this one site, it opens up a lot of possibilities. You could pull the building in towards the town hall and obviously get more efficient placement of it. And also, again, there are things we know we want to do with the parking lot, this building, which, again, if you're going as part of a bond project, it could be very efficient to include with that. So there are advantages, but we need to quantify, what is the cost of that advantage.
Any other questions? Councilor Allen?
Mr. Mayor, does a protocol exist for when or at what point do our local law enforcement officials get drawn out of town for an incident? Like when we have our police report to an incident in, say, Waterford, is there a threshold at which they start saying, we can start drawing from local law enforcement? I know in larger situations, I'm sure it affords bringing different police departments together. But in smaller cases, I would wonder.
That is an excellent question, and I would have to say the answer is no, or at least if there is one, I don't know about it. And there were two recent incidents. One was arguably it was local, and so there was some sense to it. We were cooperating with a more local force. However, the issue is complicated by the fact that we have canines. Not every town does. But, sometimes the towns we go to, in fact, I happened to be with the first selectman when that happened, and they have canines also. So that's an excellent question. I would like to see a protocol. In fact, I wrote a letter that you may remember to True B stating what I thought the protocol should be. And I don't understand why there isn't something like that, but I am looking into it, and I will report back to you.
I think the problem is there isn't a protocol.
Okay, that's another way to look at it. And you have to understand, evening and night shifts, it's basically a sergeant and one person, which means a call goes into the police station, so somebody has to make that decision. I don't know who makes that decision.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor? Hearing none. Let's see. Any old business? On to... Oh. Any new business? Anyone would like to amend the agenda under new business? Consent calendar.
Move it.
Second.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Aye.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
The motion carries. On to Administration Committee. Mr. Steve.
Thank you, Mother Ledger. I would like to make a motion to set a public hearing date for January 9, 2013, to be held at 6:15 p.m. in the council chambers, Annex Building 741, Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding a proposed Town of Ledyard blight ordinance as contained in the draft dated November 14, 2012.
Second.
Discussion?
Let me just say, some of you recall that we did have a public hearing on this already. We incorporated many of the comments that were given to us. And the ordinance has changed substantially enough to where it warrants a second public hearing, and that's what this is.
Any questions? Just one comment. I looked at, I pulled out my old life file, and my draft was dated January 13th, 2010. So we've been kicking this around for 3 years. So, but I think you got it right. Looks good. Any other questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
I already voted first once.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Let me quickly add, if I may, as Chairman Allen pointed out, we've had an influx of volunteers. If this ordinance does pass, I'm sorry, Counselor.
Right.
Oh, I had too many cookies.
Only that.
What was in those cookies, man?
Eggnog cookies.
If this ordinance is passed, we will be looking for more volunteers to fill the committee. This will be a very interesting committee to be on. So I'd like to put that out. If there's anyone out there who's looking for something to do, this would be a good chance.
Next item, please.
Motion to appoint Mr. Arnold N. Feaster, Democrat of 39 Berry Drive, Gales Ferry, as a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission for a 2-year term ending October 31, 2013, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Lupinski.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France? Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan? Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 7.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Roger Cotting, Republican of 13 Hemlock Circle, Gales Ferry, to the Board of Assessment Appeals for a 4-year term ending December 4, 2016, filling a term left by Mr. Holman.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I've spoken with Mr. Cotting on the phone, and I just wanted to thank him for stepping up. It's good to see new people filling positions. So, thank you, Mr. Cotting.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 8.
I'll move to appoint Mr. Robert J. Sampson, unaffiliated of 10 South Glenwoods Road, Gales Ferry, to the Pension Board for a 3-year term ending January 20th, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion?
He comes highly recommended from the chair.
I spoke to Mr. Sampson, and very well qualified. We have a really great pension board. Good choice, good vacancy, Phil. Would you call the roll, Roxanne?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 9.
Move to appoint Mr. Lawrence Helfrich, unaffiliated of 26 Cliff Road, Ledyard, to the Ledyard Town Center Committee as a member of the community at large for a term ending February 11, 2014, filling a vacancy left by Ms. Calhoun.
Second.
Discussion, do you want to explain the little switcheroo there?
Yeah, Stephanie Calhoun has moved over to the Board of Ed, and Larry Helfrich was part of, was it zoning?
Larry was a zoning member for the Town Center Committee, and when
Planning and zoning were combined, he did not join the combined commission, and so he is now coming on as citizen at large.
He must really enjoy that committee.
And if you remember, he said he missed getting out with the boys.
Yes.
So,
They enjoy having.
we do.
And girls.
that's right.
Well, we had a girl.
Now you don't.
Lost her.
Yeah.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Oops, hold on. Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan? Yes. Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 10.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Charles Watson Jr., unaffiliated of 9 Eska Drive, Ledyard, to the Pension Board for a 3-year term ending January 20th, 2015, filling a vacancy left by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Mr. Watson did attend the pension board meeting this morning, and enjoyed it so much, he decided to join.
Very good. Very good. Any further discussion? Roxanne, call the roll.
Could I ask a question? I see that this is an add-on,
Yes.
and we're substituting Mr. Watson for Ms. Quinn.
Mhm.
And could you explain that?
Ms. Laura Chin, I contacted her this past week. It was really just a timing issue. We had a vacancy that was filled by Mr. Robert Sampson. Ms. Chin was looking to volunteer somewhere in the town, and so I sent her a list of the vacancies. She liked Economic Development Commission, so she has been appointed to the Economic Development Commission, and shortly thereafter, we received another vacancy on the pension board, and so that was quickly filled by Mr. Watson.
That's not the story I heard. I heard the mayor stole her. That's what he said this morning.
So, just quick.
Yeah, yes, he said he got her first. She's
So-
very qualified.
So the reason I asked is because we said we were going to use Ledyard Gales Ferry Community Forum to ask for people to step up and serve on commissions, and she is the first one to do so. She responded through Facebook, so.
Yeah, she was very eager to.
All I can
yeah.
say is keep posting. We've still got some real significant
Yeah.
needs on some commissions.
And this is what she actually prefers the other
Okay.
committees. It wasn't like she didn't get the chance.
So is it EDC or wetlands?
EDC.
Just
It
says
says
wetlands.
wetlands. All right.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Enthusiastically.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Let's see, next item.
Number 11.
No,
We actually voted on,
Mr.
we
Watson.
read one, but it looks like we're voting on two under the same motion.
No.
One was originally going to go to the pension board, but now is on EDC.
EDC is a mayor. She's already appointed.
Got it.
Okay, so we're good. Now we're on to
I said the mayor stole her.
Community Services, item number 11.
Okay, motion to adopt the certified resolution authorizing the Regional Visiting Nurse Agency of the Town of Ledyard to engage in student nursing clinical instruction for the University of Connecticut as contained in the draft dated November 29, 2012.
Second.
Just a little background on this. The proposed resolution will enable Ledyard's nursing agency to participate in a student nursing clinical instruction program with the University of Connecticut. There's no cost to the town, and this program will benefit both the town and the university, as the student nurses will be shadowing the town nurses out in the field.
Great program.
It's a fantastic program.
Any questions for Councilor Marshall? Hearing none. Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. On to Finance, item number 13.
No, item number 12.
Whoops, oh, moving ahead.
I know we're hurrying the hell
Oh,
along.
sorry. Item number 12.
Motion to approve the Register of Voters Emergency Election Procedures Plan as requested in memo dated December 5th, 2012.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, to comply with Connecticut General Statutes 9-174A, Emergency Contingency Plan, the registers of voters have submitted an emergency election procedures plan for the council's approval. And there's an 18-page PowerPoint available on IQM2 outlining their plan as to what to do in emergencies, how to evacuate the election place, how to secure the equipment, what to do if there's a disturbance, things like that.
Any questions? Yes.
I would note, during Hurricane Sandy, being so close to the elections this year, they did a great job, absolutely. And myself and Councilor Dombrowski were here at the town hall when they came up to actually pull the machines out and get them charged up. Fortunately, we had electricity at the town hall. But I believe this plan covers those kinds of incidents
Yes.
Where the mayor's shaking his head no. It does not.
I'm sorry.
Well, there are certainly issues involved with these electronic voting machines. Electricity can be a problem. There were several places, as we all know, New Jersey, New York, where they weren't available. So it's great that we have a plan for these kinds of emergencies or other emergencies.
Yes, Mayor
When
Rodriguez.
I looked at the plan, that was one of the first questions I had, because if you read it, it does not, it speaks only of emergencies that occurred during an election. And I spoke with Mrs. Gorman about that, and she specifically showed me what it was the state requested, and this is what the state requested. And so I asked her the question, well, what happens if the hurricane had happened 1 week later? And she said that would be up to the state to determine whether or not we hold the election. So, this doesn't say what do you do if you have no electricity, no water, things like that. That's not what this is intended to cover. So I had the same idea when I saw it. Oh, this is the emergency plan that the state's looking for, but I don't think they're prepared to even think about that. We came close. I mean, parts of the state came very, very close, but they were obviously, would we use generators? How would we do it?
Reading through what it's only what happens in the event during the day of the election itself, not anything leading up to.
Okay, so we've got part of an emergency plan.
Well, an emergency plan for the day of the election. That's it.
Any other questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Moving on to Finance Committee.
Make a motion to set a public hearing date to be held on January 9th, 2013 at 6:45 p.m. in the council chambers, 741 Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding the proposed ordinance establishing a retirement plan as contained in the draft dated November 12, 2012.
Second.
Discussion?
Just some background. Essentially what this does is we had 4 ordinances that discussed retirement plans, pension plans for the town, and the pension board looked at that and realized it really should have one to cover the town. And so they consolidated, working with Attorney Clark, into a single ordinance, and then this will be that ordinance putting out a single plan. It really references the entire plan as opposed to putting details in the ordinance.
Any questions? Councilor France? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in 0, 9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 15.
Make a motion to approve the plan document as restated in the draft dated November 13, 2012, and forwarded by the pension.
Second.
Discussion?
Essentially, this is the updated pension plan for the town, for the defined benefit plan is updated and incorporating changes, specific changes.
No, but they made sure that everything was clarified. There was a lot of things in there, like may annualize the last year. Those things like that were all cleared up. It was run by Attorney Barth, and he made a lot of improvements to it. The pension board approved it unanimously, so they're very much in favor of it.
Very good. Any other questions?
So, we just approved a public hearing on the ordinance
Yes.
establishing the plan, so why are we voting on the plan now?
The ordinance established the pension board. Ordinance establishing the retirement plan.
We have current ordinances.
So we're having a public hearing on the ordinance establishing the plan, but now we're going to vote on the plan?
Plan documents, they're different.
Yeah, one is the plan, and the other one is actually taking the 4 ordinances that the pension board currently uses and just merging them into one document. And I think we have any other further questions, we can ask Chairman Thompson from the pension board.
Did we cover it?
Yeah, essentially the ordinance is just adding some other duties to the board.
The plan is the actual legal document describing
The town's pension.
the town's pension. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Good job. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 15.
Make a motion to recommend the town council approve department head salary increases as recommended in the mayor's memo dated November 29, 2012, to be effective January 1st, 2013.
Second.
Discussion?
Is the mayor's proposed salary increases for department heads based on his assessment of them and their merit. And was reviewed by the finance committee, recommend approval.
Any discussion? Yes.
Yeah, when's the last time these people had a raise?
No, been since the years.
When is the last time these people got a raise? I believe it's been a number of years.
It's been at least 3 years.
I just want to make the public aware of that.
And I also want to congratulate the mayor on doing it this way. I like the fact that you looked at each job, you know, where they were in the salary range, their merits and all that, and doing the increases based on that. Because in the past, it's just been a flat salary increase, or somebody will come and lobby for their one person, and that one person will get a bigger raise than everybody else. But this was more of a comprehensive way of looking at all of these people, comparing them against themselves and the standards, and I think that's a really good way to do it.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, for the record again, and for the public watching, these raises are between 2 and 2.75%, and we have been negotiating through bargain labor, 0, 2, and 2, or similar. So 1 year at 0, a year at 2, a year at 2. So these are in line with that, and also, I think, well-deserved.
Yes.
The people of the town have been working a number of years without a raise.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 16.
Motion to approve the letter of directive to the mayor for the preparation of the fiscal year 2013-2014 budget as contained in the draft dated December 11, 2012. In addition, approve the letter of directive to the Board of Education for the preparation of fiscal year 2013-2014 budget as contained in the draft dated December 11, 2012.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just to highlight some of the content, some of the challenges that we face in the coming year. As many of you are aware from reading the paper, the state has a current around $415 million deficit in the current year. The governor's already taken steps to reduce within his control about $120 million of that. The remainder will be presented to the legislature. Some of the challenges that could affect us, as the mayor alluded to in his comments, is that there's a possibility that we could have a reduction in current year funds from the state. And in addition, in the coming year, there's a $1 billion deficit in the next biennial budget that the legislature will have to deal with. In the past biennial budget, the governor had proposed a $54 million reduction in municipal aid. That was removed the day before the budget was passed, but he has made no guarantees on municipal aid remaining constant in future years. So that is a possibility which would affect the revenue side for the town. In addition, recently, because of the AC Coin lawsuit, we have a real possibility that we will see a reduction in revenue from the other leased companies that lease equipment to the Massachusetts Pequot tribal nation. We want to see where does it indicate that, and that could be another loss of revenue in the near term. Of course, when we appeal, we can try and recoup those taxes, but it doesn't help us in the current year. So there are some very real challenges that our town may face going into the coming budget year, and they are addressed in the two letters.
Any discussion? Questions? Hearing none, Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 17. And I'm going to ask Mrs. Wadecki to read this one and explain it, because my first time on the town council when we voted on this, I read this and said, what the heck? And so you do the best explanation I know.
I move to reject the agreement between the Ledyard Board of Education and the Ledyard Education Association, Ledyard, Connecticut, for the period of July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
Second.
And what this is that the council does not approve the contract. We are only allowed to reject the contract by state statute. So we have to vote to reject, which means if you want to reject it, you vote yes. If you agree with the contract, you vote no.
So no is yes.
Yes. I mean, it's a very weird.
No to approve.
Yeah, it is. It's an unusual one, and I know the first time everybody goes to vote on this, we always have somebody who says yes. They go, no, I mean no. So it's. But I see the contract changes are here. Did you have any presentation on this budget?
I had, we did get the email, which I forwarded, and I did, members of the Board of Ed did ask if we wanted someone to present, and I put out the word if anybody wanted anybody here to present, and nobody seemed compelled.
Well, reading the.
Yes, it seems fine. In fact, I was going to ask Counselor Dombrowski, I think he has the email right there. Do you want to just give the overview?
The overview for the contract for the first year, 2013-2014, is a 0 increase with a top step increase of 1.5. Steps 2 through 14 advance with reduced steps to amount with a total step of 2.56%. For calendar year 2014 to 2015, GWI increase is 1.5% with a step in GWI of 2.95%. For calendar years 15 to 16, GWI of 1.5% increase with a step in GWI of 2.99%. The freeze of all stipend pays at the current rate of the 2012-2013 rate. For transfers, involuntary transfer provision is approved and no longer subject to seniority provisions. Health insurance premium co-shares is currently 17%. For the 2013-2014 calendar year, it will go up to 18%. For the 2014-2015 calendar year, it will go to 18.5%. For 2015 to 2016, it will go to 19%. And for prescription medication copay, generic remains the same at $10. The formulary rises from $15 to $20, and for non-formulary rises from $30 to $35. So looking it over, it's pretty consistent with everything that's asking of everyone else as well.
Any other discussion? Yes.
Just a little more background. When in 2008, when we entered the recession, we received the previous contract, and we have that in this document. And at the time, the total general wage increase plus steps was about a 4% increase. But we voted to approve that one because the negotiations had taken place during better times, and it wouldn't have been fair to say, hey. So this time, negotiations have taken place in the current recession, and they're much more reasonable in total. So I appreciate what the board and what the union have agreed to.
Any other discussion?
Just remember, vote no, you don't want to reject.
I just wanted to add that, every year we say this is going to be a tough year. Well, this is going to be a tough year because we're already starting off way behind. Once we add this on and some other things that we know are coming down the pike. So I anticipate a challenging year. We've had meetings that we've been proud to get out of here by 8:30. The tough work is starting in January. We've had a few easy months. We don't have a meeting next in 2 weeks, but January is going to be where we earn our salaries, I guess. Huh? Anyway, any other discussion?
It's double yours.
Yes.
I just want to note a generic statement. We often get comments from citizens that it looks like you guys never argue about anything. It's always yes. You're always in agreement. You have to realize that everything that comes to the council at this level has been through subcommittee after subcommittee, and we have argued it to death. So by the time it gets here, we agree on it. So I want to say that for anyone who's watching, anyone who's listening, that we really do work through these things, and we really do take a lot of time coming to agreement, so that when we are in council sessions like this, we can present a unified front on whatever it is that we're talking about. And that applies pretty much across the board.
I'm going to have to vote against you next meeting.
It'll probably be an appointment.
Probably his appointment.
It's a good thing to bring up periodically.
Absolutely.
The real debate happens in committee, for sure. Any other discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg.
No.
Mr. Prince.
No.
Mr. Marshall.
No.
Mrs. McGrattan.
No.
Mr. Soms.
No.
Mrs. Wadecki.
No.
Mr. Allen.
No.
Mrs. Davis.
No.
Mr. Dombrowski.
No.
0 in favor, 9 opposed.
Motion carries.
Good vote.
At this time, I would just like to open up a little discussion on the information that was provided in regards to a regional ethics commission, whether the group would support that. You have some detail in front of you about that. You know, I know Mr. Holdridge, year after year, thought that the town should create a ethics committee or commission, and the mayor had sent us a memo saying that at the COG meeting that there was some discussion about forming a regional ethics commission, and he was looking for our input in that. Yes.
I like the idea of a regional one, because I think a lot of the ethics commissions, sometimes they're discussing themselves. And it's, you know, if you go to a regional one, you may not know, they may not even know who you are, so I think it's a lot more impartial. And, but I think there's logistics in forming one. I think we need to know a little bit more about how they're going to do it. Do we get representation on it? Do we have to pay if we send a case to it? I mean, what exactly the logistics of it are going to be?
I can't explain some of those things. I really do need your guidance here, just to let you know what's happening. The COG voted to authorize their administration committee to form the bylaws for this. At the same time, what they're doing, to answer the first question, is they envision it as, I don't know, a 3 or 5 member panel, which would be made up of members of the community, not necessarily, you know, one from each town or anything like that. They're talking about, you know, judges, prosecutors, people like that.
Oh, okay. Very impartial people.
Yes. The issue is exactly what's been said. If you look at, there's some cases going on in some neighboring towns where the Ethics Commission is, even if it's not one of your own, it's not one of the people themselves, you know, everybody knows everybody in town. And it gets very, very sticky. As far as costs go, and this is the part that I have to get clarification on, there will be a cost to the member towns, because the towns will be joining this separate from the COG. And there will be a cost associated with this. I don't know how much it would be. I mean, I would hope you would have people who would make their decisions, and, you know, there would be a whole lot of legalities involved. So I'd be a little bit concerned about that, because it'd be a situation where we might not control the actual, we might not control the costs. It would definitely not involve any of the CEOs being on that commission, because that would be a conflict in the way many boards are. So there is that issue. Let me just tell you the other side of it. The other side of it is people who feel that if there is something, they're kind of, you know, throwing it out to people that they know nothing about. judgment about what's going on within the town. So there was some concern that you were abdicating and you were sending it someplace else. The only the concern I've had all along is we do not have anything except, from what I remember, a couple of sentences in the charter. And I don't know if that was a comment after the last charter revision that, you know, if you read it, and I think over the years we've added a couple of words, used to say, you know, a direct conflict, now it says, you know, a direct or indirect benefit, something like that. I know that, for instance, the town of Waterford has had an ethics commission for years. And I happen to know because my dental hygienist has been on this for years and proceeds to tell me how they haven't had anything to do. I don't know if they have a Christmas party. They do. They've never met. Nothing's ever, you know, ever come out of it. So I don't envision having an ethics panel in the town. But, you know, we may also want to consider at some point, even if it's not in the charter, something to talk about. I know that there's things that come up, you know, that I see in my office, and it's like, wow, you know, there's nothing about that. There's nothing that talks about conflicts of interest, about accepting gifts, you know, things like that. I don't think there's anything like that in the charter that gets into those details. So this is wonderful. They're going to have an ethics panel, but how are they going to know that if you broke any rules or any, you know, what are they going to judge you against?
One of the things in here, it says we would require to pass an ordinance in order to join the regional ethics commission. So in that ordinance, we define it.
Or we would define it based on what they told us had to be in the ordinance. Because that would be the other issue. They might tell us.
There is a draft that they say they provide.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't amend it.
Yeah, so, but I would, you know, maybe as a, and when this is ready, I have to vote on this, you know, whether or not to join. So I'm coming back to you. When this is actually written, I'll get all the documents to you beforehand, so you can look at and decide whether or not it's something that you want to do.
Couldn't we refer it to at least a subcommittee, to have a subcommittee look into it a little more? I mean, we haven't had anybody try to make an ethics complaint down, but I know we've had questions. I mean, people will say, somebody will abstain from voting because they don't want to appear like they have, you know, an ethics problem. So maybe if we actually looked into it and decided to join or not join, we at least open up that discussion again about whether or not we should have an ordinance or something addressing it.
Well, I will refer that to admin.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
It's already been to admin in the last, I'll say, 4 years, and we decided not to recommend an ethics commission.
But this is a
That was the
regional.
local.
That was the local.
Right, but if you read some of the backup that you sent us, a lot of the towns already have ethics commissions. And they said, we really never use them. So I'm not really in favor of, unless I hear maybe something different, but right now, okay.
I'm sorry. I'll let your ethics commission, or this ethics commission.
This ethics commission.
You're not in favor?
No.
Good, that's what I like to see, is somebody just sitting up. But I have some mixed feelings about it.
I have
You know,
mixed
signing up
feelings.
for something, what does that mean? If anything happens here, and over the past 20 years, we've had some things come up. And right now, you as the council are the investigative board and arm of the town, and that doesn't always work very well.
But we are very
You
ethical.
know, what's that?
We are very ethical.
Just ask us.
Yeah, but not always very wise. And you know, with a council, you know, there's politics involved and things like that. So I would still ask that the council look into, you know, putting together what we consider to be a code of ethics or something like that. Well, there was something in there. Now that I think of it, COD gave us, but it wasn't. Let's see what comes from them, and hopefully we'll have time to review it.
In the package, the code of conduct of public employees and public officials is a very detailed list.
That's true.
So we can talk to each other, right? So it says.
That's FOI.
Well, for instance, just a simple thing of putting a value on gifts that you can receive. You know,
Why, is anybody going to guess that?
Right here.
I got cookies.
I mean, what am I missing out on something here?
We cannot put a value on these gifts.
Don't be surprised though.
It's Christmas time. Come up to my office and see the things that.
Oh, you get the gifts.
Oh, I said it. It's just.
I want a regional ethics.
I want a Ledyard ethics commission.
I just want to say seriously that I hadn't looked at this back in 2005. It's really hard to have an ethics committee to have a commission in your own town. And I thought one of the points the newspaper made was a good one, which you mentioned there. The towns may not have enough to do it, but if you get a group of towns together, you can have a commission that may have, or at least a better chance of enough to do that they can meet regularly. And I do like the third party.
Well, people might complain more if, if someone had to go to the mayor's office and complain about something.
mayor.
Or the mayor's not gonna have that investigated,
With courts also, they get frivolous lawsuits, and we're not gonna hear that.
Right,
So I think that would be the mechanism.
right.
And I think it might have the other effect too. If you're dealing within your town, you learn something. I think when you have to go to a commission that's pretty well formed and pretty well respected, you might think twice about bringing something
Frivolous, you'd be doing, it'd be much more serious.
But, and I also look at this, mixed feelings, same thing as the mayor has said as well, but I think it's something that, we've looked at this through admin on a local level, but I think it's something that needs to go back to admin to look at how it would apply on a regional level.
It certainly warrants looking at it.
Right, and I think looking back at and getting what the admin committee had looked at 4 years ago and reviewing that with this information that's being provided by COG and see what the regional impact would be, something I think we should look at, not.
And with that discussion, I'm going to call that our discuss work session issues, since we spent some time discussing that. So the only thing left would be the student exam.
You're on the hook.
Just kidding.
Second. Aye.